I would like to welcome everybody present and everybody online. I would like to thank our guests for accepting this invitation for today. We have panelists here and present, like all deputy mayors present, and we have 3 speakers online. I'm Kata, Tüttő, Deputy Mayor of Budapest, responsible for all the fun things like the grey infrastructure, the waste management, water management, sewage, transport, and I would say mosquitoes, because this is always an interesting issue during the summer. I'm also a member of the European Committee of the Regions, so we do a lot of networking with other mayors, and today's panel is about the role of cities, role of local democracies in safeguarding democracies in a whole. So what are the cities' role in democracies, and how can they strengthen it? What tools do they have, and how can they be stronger in the future? So this is note. We have one commissioner with us. We have a former prime minister. We have deputy mayors, and we have a professor. So we'll look at this issue from many angles, from a European perspective, from a national point of view, local point of view, and from an academic point of view. So we will start with the first round of the speakers. I will try to have someone online and then offline. And we will start with Vera Jourova, who is Vice President of European Commission. I'm really glad that you could accept this invitation. She is responsible for values and transparency, deals with democracy, rule of law, disinformation, and media pluralism. We talk a lot about these issues in Hungary in the moment, and I hope we will talk about it less next year. So the floor is yours, Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to Budapest, although virtually. I will start with something I really feel strongly about Hungary. I was a very young girl when living in Czechoslovakia, for whom Hungary was a kind of zone of freedom from the perspective of somebody living in a totalitarian country. And of course, we know it was compromised freedom. But still, my first jeans were bought in Budapest. And I remember Queen in Budapest, which was absolutely incredible sign of freedom for Czechoslovak people. And when I read with big interest the text of the mayor of Budapest, Mr. Karácsony, called How Democracy Can Win Again, I could subscribe every word he wrote about the big hopes of 1989 and about some disillusion and about some mistakes we have done or we have made as liberal Democrats, that we have underestimated the feelings of people, that they feel a lack of security and some kind of injustice and that some feeling that democracy, modern democracy, does not deliver what they want. So I think that this is something I wanted to say it at the beginning, because this was a very important thing for me to also fine tune to how you are thinking about the current situation. Now, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, other countries, we are all part of a united Europe, where we really want to protect the freedoms, democracy, rule of law, free and fair elections, free media, active citizenship. These are the values which have to be protected every day. Because some years ago, we had a strange illusion that they will be here forever, that we do not have to fight for them. And now we see in Europe, in many places, that this does not work without the active protection. European Union is not anymore a single market. It is the union of values. And here the role of cities and local communities is absolutely indispensable, especially the active citizenship, I think, starts there and has to be nurtured, especially on local level. Because you who are the elected representatives of the municipalities, you are the main masters of citizen space. And at the same time, you are faced with a difficult situation when global solutions and global issues have local impact. And you are those who have to explain to people why and what are the solutions which will be taken on local level to manage the sometimes uneasy new trends. And I speak about mega trends, and also some mega trends which are now which we foresee are driven by the EU. And here we will have to cooperate very much to be able to explain to citizens why. Green Deal, it's one mega trend. This is something which the cities should take as an opportunity, but also as the issue which has to be explained to the people why. And digitalization is the other trend. It started already before COVID, now it's accelerated. And it is something, it's the mega trend which we want to promote while being able to decrease the negative impact for the people. And here again, the role of cities is absolutely crucial. Technologies, quick, fast changes. Many people who do not understand where it is going. I belong to this generation. I sometimes feel really technologically excluded. And that's why I wanted also to mention that in Europe, we want to go digital. We are ready to introduce, I hope, reasonable rules to decrease the negative impact. We have adopted the Digital Services Act, which brings the solution against hate speech, against crime online, which I guess is also the issue for the municipalities and for local communities. We are introducing now measures against disinformation while protecting the freedom of speech. Why am I speaking about that? Because the digitalization will really affect everyone. And I would like to stop lamenting that digitalization is introducing something wrong or something negative, some apocalyptic visions. But I would like us to adapt to the changes and to help the people to adapt alike. And here again, I think this is a great opportunity also for the cities to harvest the benefits of digitalization and at the same time to decrease the negative impacts. I don't just stop me when it's high time to stop. I don't want to steal time for other speakers. I just wanted to go now to the issues relating to the funding, because maybe from my side it's expected that I will explain how the funding of municipalities will look like. And it is also connected with the role of municipalities and cities in our democratic system. We are opening new budget now, and there are three principles I want to emphasize at this moment, which will be very important for the cities to bear in mind, and for the member states, of course. Investments must make sense. The people must see that the money goes to the things which are useful for them, in a very simple terms. The investments and the EU funding has to respect fundamental values of the EU. So here I want to say that we really mean it seriously, that the money will not go to the projects which do not respect the fundamental rights. And this is the enabling condition, which is enshrined in the legislation. And the third thing, the money will have to be better protected against crime, against abuse, against corruption, but also better protected against using the political key for distribution. And these are the new things which the Commission will really pay attention to very, very strongly. As you know, we have achieved the adoption of the so-called general regime of conditionality. When I said in 2017 in Vienna, for the first time, that we should connect the money with the rule of law principles, it was a huge scandal. Nobody believed that it might happen one day. How come? And I said, I even used the cynical sentence, maybe those who do not understand the values will understand the money. And now you see that over time, this issue of decreasing of respect to fundamental rights and the rule of law has really become a serious issue in EU, which is endangering EU member states' trust and the unity. We thought that this conditionality was adopted in December last year, and we will apply it. So there is a very important condition that the beneficiaries should not be negatively affected by the application of the conditionality. I think this is a big message also for the Hungarian municipalities, that we want to introduce the rule that if in case we will apply the sanction, and you know the process is very long, the Commission cannot do it, it will have to be voted by the member states, but if it will be once applied, then the member state has to continue payments. And I think that this is very important to emphasize that this is how we mean it in Brussels, just to explain that. For how much time do I have, Madam Deputy Mayor?
If you can stay with us,
I am over.
I would give a floor to the other panelists, and we will have another round of discussions. So
just give me one minute.
Absolutely
Essential role for the cities in upholding democracy is to make people active, to make them to be demanding, ask, hold those in power on account. Because nothing is better present from heaven than inactive people, passive people, the crowd which is so easy to manipulate. This is something which the autocrats need. The Democrats have to face that the citizens demand answers, and they demand high quality, not corrupted public service. And I think this is something which is also starting at the local and municipal and city level, because there the people can see easier that the decisions of their elected people have the impact on their everyday life. And I have so many other things to say, but I will leave it for you and now maybe come back. Sorry to be long, and sorry, I am always passionate when I speak about active citizens, because I myself used to work at the city hall, and the people were shouting on me every day, and it was a useful feedback for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Every minute was really valuable for us, especially being Deputy Mayor of Budapest and having this conflict with our government, being completely left out from the recovery and resiliency facility, being completely left out from the next generation budget, violating the partnership principles. So for us, it's really important that it's not the citizens who should pay the price for what's happening on the national level in Hungary. So I would like to ask the next question to Mr. Hermano Sanches Ruivo, who is Deputy Mayor of Pérez, responsible for Europe, and also who is member of the board of the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is really, really important for me. I'm also an ambassador of the Covenant of Mayors, and we always talk about the role of cities, how much we can do in reaching the climate goals. But we never talk about what cities can do for democracy. So the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Merci, merci Kata. The first thing is important to answer this big question. And my answer, cities are democratic strongholds. But maybe we have to understand there's, for me, 3 conditions. The first, it's always a work in progress. We shall never forget. It's always a work in progress. The second thing, of course, all the cities, and we know as deputy mayors, the work has to be done in our homes, in our cities. If we lost the inhabitants for a lot of important topics, then cities will be weaker. But there's another condition on this second point, is to act and to share much more cooperation between cities. And the third thing I would like to develop, we are guardians, but do we realize the work that has to be done on rural areas? I guess we don't. So if I take it briefly, those 3 points, it's amazing because we had those years of confidence, multiculturalism, this confidence in our democratic system all over Europe, and then we were struck within 2 years with things that happen, starting with Brexit and the victory of populist Trump, 2016. Then we had an incredible number of voters for Marine Le Pen in France in 2017. And then we had Salvini in Italy propelled to the most important position in Italian politics. We were struck because we did realize that something was happening. And at the same time, and it's quite ironic, the progressive vote remained stable and even increased in some parts. Think about all the victories in the major cities in Europe. Remember what happened in London, Paris, Milan, Lisbon, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Berlin, Florence and Vienna. Remember what happened also here in Budapest, in Prague, in Warsaw, in Bratislava, and not far from us now, in Zagreb. So, and maybe we should also talk about what happened on those regions after the European Union. You know, the things like that were very good information for us. What happened in Ankara, what happened in Istanbul or Izmir for Turkey, even what happened in Delors. So the thing is, cities are pillars. We see them are democratic strongholds. But to remain strongholds, we have, as I said, to do a lot of work within our cities. When we have special policies on solidarity, for example, when we have the courage on commitment to ecological and climate change, when we have these positions of doing work that the inhabitants accept and that they giving us this responsibility, we must not forget that it's also important to have the sharing with the other cities. The networks, as you said, are very important. I must talk about another one, for example, the Eurocities. Eurocities is an important network because it's taking much more cities maybe than the others and those big and smaller cities. But this cooperation between the cities are so important that we must not forget that in some parts of our history, if there was not this cooperation and this sharing, we will have lived much more difficult days. But we also giving the possibility, let's talk, for example, about the Paris Climate Agreement. when President Trump withdrew from this agreement, we had the cooperation with the American cities, and we give them the possibility to stay on this important goal that was to be shared. Think about the terrorist attacks that some of our cities lived. The perception of the inhabitants for something that was so dramatic was different because of this sharing with the other cities. And also because it happens in different cities. It happens in Paris, in Nice for France, but remember Copenhagen, remember Brussels, remember Vienna, that live also some. This capacity of sharing with the others, of being a part of the solution, is something that is very important for our democratic systems, but also for another topics. I do remember Madrid and Brussels with Paris fighting against the European Commission on these diesel decisions. But it was important because we knew that our inhabitants were asking for it. So we did the right things together, and 3 cities at that time. And last but not least, we're very proud in Paris to have signed the Pact of 3 Cities. It's not only a network or a new network, it's a behavior. It's being and standing when we have to do, and it happened in 2019 when the 4 of Visegrad decided to propose this pact. And now we see that much more cities from all over the world are signing. So this cooperation between cities are very important. And to finish, I would like to have, and maybe there will be a discussion about it, but did we really realize how important is to not stay only in our cities, but act much more on the rural areas? Think about the Brexit. Think about, well, there's always this joke about I never saw, our friends from the US, I never saw a voter for Trump. Of course not, because you're living in the cities and you never go outside. That's happened also in Europe. We have to be much more confident about this cooperation, because if not, we're staying in a place where things could be better, but they are never better enough if your neighbor is not as well as you. That's why this big difference that happens in France, that happens in Europe, that happens in the bigger and biggest democratic countries has to be work. And something that for me as a politician is really, really important. And the last word, thinking about Enrico, Letta, bonjour Enrico. We are living dark hours. We are living moments that are difficult. But thinking about, that's why I'm talking about Italy, thinking about the Middle Age and the Renaissance, that was at that time that we find, that they find the new solutions. And that's exactly what we have to do, and all together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will give the floor to Enrico Letta, who is president of the Institut Jacques Delors and former Prime Minister of Italy. But I would like to ask him to maybe reflect on your last remark, because in Italy there are real regions, working regions, bundling up towns and cities for projects. It's so different because in Hungary we don't have that. So does this work, or it's just for the EU funding, or it's also for helping progression and helping smaller towns with information and with democracies? But thank you for accepting the invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here, even if only connected remotely. I'm now connected from a very small town, a municipality called Gaiole in Chianti. Is in the very nice and beautiful region where I come from, that is Tuscany, and this is the Chianti region. And this region is today in front line in creating new ways and new frameworks of participation of small municipalities, small communities. And we are working, first of all, because of the next generation EU funds can be implemented not only at the national level and not only with big cities, but also with small cities. For instance, we have a project with the Italian government led by Mario Draghi. We decided to apply part of this money to revitalize small cities. You know, my region, Tuscany, is full of small cities, municipalities with more than 10 centuries of history, and with the need to revitalize them, to give them the possibility to create new possibilities to participate. And this is why what I'm doing here now, as also national leader of the Italian Democratic Party in this very period, is to work in that direction, to use correctly all the money that Next Generation EU is giving us. I would like to just to use 3 words that are, in my view, very much connected to what you said. And then I will end up with just a reflection as president of the Jacques Delors Institute and founder of the Budapest European Agora, that is a very important youth participation, democratic participation European platform. My 3 words are: first, proximity; second, participation; and third, solidarity. I think these 3 words are strongly connected with what Vera Jourova just said minutes ago, and I'm very much I'm very happy what she said, because it is a very important direction that the European Commission decided to take on these issues. Proximity, first of all, we need. I think the European Union has, since 1 year ago, 1 year and a half ago, is among the old funders of the European Union, is improving again the level of support, the level of popularity, and after a long decade with main problems in that term. Of course, I'm very much influenced by what happened in my country in the last decade. Now there's a big improvement in support towards the European Union. It is very important that we can implement this support on the ground. When I say on the ground, I say we have to work with cities, and this is why I say proximity is, in my view, the main word. And I strongly push the European Commission to work in that direction. We have to work further and further projects in terms of links with villages remotely, and not only with big cities, but also with the connections with small villages and with the remote towns. My second point is about participation. I think I'm very much in favor of what, and as Jacques Delors Institute were following what the Conférence sur le futur de l'Europe, Conference on the Future of Europe, is doing. I know that Vera Jourova is very much involved in this activity. I think we have to push what is there, the citizens' participation, the possibility to launch participative democracy tools. We, in my party, the party that I am leading, that is the first party in Italy, we are today launching a digital platform named Democratic Agora to help citizens. The platform is the same that the conference is using, is Decidim. And I would like to say hello also to our friends from Barcelona here. And we are launching this platform to launch 4 months until end of December of participative democracy activities to help my party and my coalition to have new ideas and to have these ideas decided by our people and not by myself or our leaders. I think it is a very important idea and we are pushing in that direction. I'm very happy because there's a big improvement in terms of participation. My third word is solidarity. I'm strongly convinced that after pandemic, we need more solidarity. We need more social cohesion. And I think we need to keep connections, to keep links. We have to work on the ground on these links, on this connection. I think it's very important, and I was very much interested in what the deputy mayor of Pérez was saying. It is very important to create links among big cities, capitals, and small villages. We need to create this kind of links. I think it is very important. I end up with this, and I would like to thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor of Budapest, for your welcome. We created, as Jacques Delors Institute, with the Bertelsmann Foundation and with other foundations, we created this Budapest European Agora, a group of young people attending Budapest each year and creating many activities during the year in terms of improving participation and democratic participation. I think the title, the headline of this meeting is the crucial one. Cities are really the strongholds of participation and democracy. And this is why we would like to support what you are doing. And Budapest European Agora is working. Of course, because of pandemic, we were obliged to organize the two last events remotely. The first one was in 2019 in Budapest, and we were 200 young people coming from everywhere in Europe, organized by the Jacques Delors Institute and the Bertelsmann Foundation. I would like to, of course, organize next one, the fourth meeting in presence in Budapest, and I take also the opportunity to ask Commissioner Vice President Jourova to be present in next July when we will organize this event, and I will be more than happy to host her and to host all of you and to meet you again with your mayor, dear Deputy Mayor of Budapest. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Enrico, Letta. I will now, with your last remarks, give the floor to Laura Pérez Castaño, who's Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, responsible for social rights, global justice, feminism, LGBTI rights. I would really love you to reflect on the solidarity and participation part. And now I'm writing an opinion for the European Committee of the Regions on gender and the Green Deal being very gender blind. And when it comes to climate actions, we see much more women who are active. When we look at on the day-to-day level, who are more active are women. But when it comes to democracies, when it comes to participation, what do you see? Because you do have these participatory projects. So if you could tell about these with a gendered lens, I would love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here sharing with you this a lot of reflections, actually. Now we have many issues on the table, and I will try to give the point of view of Barcelona City Council. I'm representing Barcelona. I'm so happy. Not just because because I think this forum is very interesting, but also because the signing of the declaration of the Pact of Free Cities that my colleague from Paris speaks before. I think this is an important commitment of this role of democratic strongholds that we are defending as a cities. And I think this is an important issue to reflect also that we can strengthen the alliance between cities, also to have our own voice to Europe, to our own voice to the States. I have to think that when I regarding to this session, I really found it very inspiring, the question of if cities are as democratic strongholds. And I have to say, if democratic stronghold means respecting basic democratic rights with more inclusion of the citizens, then I would like to think that cities are, and Barcelona is, a democratic stronghold. We use always a sentence, like we cities use a sentence like we are the administration closest to the citizens. And that's true, but I think that's not enough. We are only strongholds if we manage to protect and to guarantee the basic rights to health, education, housing, and work, as well as ensuring full citizens' participation. And that means all the citizens in the decision-making processes, also women, also minorities, beyond just voting every 4 years. The question here is how to do it. We talk also a lot about the right to the city, regarding to the right of housing, the right of health, the right of education. And I would like to highlight 3 issues about this right to the city. The first one is the need to avoid social exclusion with policies to reverse inequalities that exclude much of the citizenship from the decision-making processes. When the people is only thinking in survival, in have a house, health, of course they cannot participate. How can we expect them to participate if they are thinking in survival? The second one is the issue of the refugees and migration faced with states whose only aim is to find the way of not host them. We propose ourselves as a host cities. We have also worked on boosting inclusion through municipal mechanisms, such as including them on the municipal register. We call in Barcelona el Padró, even though they don't have a fixed residence. These kind of mechanisms gives them the automatic right to basic services, such as health and education, access to aid for housing, training, guidance to find work. And is this idea there should not be first-class or second-class citizens in our cities. And thirdly, we are worried about the most structural inequalities related to gender. Here we are working about women and LGBT community. That's why in Barcelona we are boosting policies to fight against the feminization of poverty and gender violence, gender and domestic violence. So we have developed active policies to the increased participation of women in decision-making processes, both at the political level, which I think is very important, but also for more quotidian issues that affect them directly. And here I insist in the concept of processes. It's not just asking them about their needs in one moment and then forgive the opinion or just leave this opinion in a document. I think we have to include women in the analysis, in the design and the implementation of the projects themselves. And to conclude of this issue about gender structural inequalities, I have to say that I would emphasize that we cannot talk about democracy if 50% of the population is excluded from these decision-making processes. Maybe if I have a few minutes, I can explain two experiences in Barcelona, and this is from a local perspective, of course, but we talk a lot about inclusive, active policies. But the truth is that we cannot blame, and here we were talking, the panelists were talking about participation of young people, of women in different processes, but we have to recognize we cannot blame citizens if they don't get involved. Particularly, as I said before, if they are just trying to survive in this huge crisis that we are suffering, and they are trying just to get by. And we can even blame them, and maybe I'm kind of negative now, but if they don't vote, we cannot blame them if they believe they could not be voting for things that don't affect them directly or don't resolve these daily needs they are facing, these daily difficulties they are facing. So I wanted to mention two projects that I think we try to encourage the participation, the involvement, and it's related to budgets, which I think we share the project with Paris and other cities, and how to design the public space. First, I would like to describe a project about participatory budgets. I think many cities now are doing this, and I think it's a really good practice. We are including the citizens in deciding how to spend the budget. And in Barcelona, I think we took it one step further. We thought that if we wanted more people, and here particularly women, to get involved, they should also propose and they should also design which kind of projects they are going to vote, of course, with the support of the city council. We also reduced the age to vote in these projects to 14 years old, because we are deciding about playgrounds, we are deciding about public space, about sport, about education. Then we think these young people also wants to say the opinion, and they want to decide. The result was that this year, even with the pandemic, approximately 40,000 people votes. It's similar to Paris. We are not now. I think it's similar numbers to Paris, to New York, to other cities, and I think it's a nice tool to involve women and to involve young people. And the second project is about the use of exploratory works in the design of the public space. And I think public space is a key issue regarding the live cities. And I have to say, and traditionally, the public space, it was designed by men for men, and the result is also the priority is given to the car. And we need to change, and I think now we are aware of the need of the city to change this. In a recent project for designing one of the major avenues of the city of Barcelona, in the first phase, we carried out an exploratory march, and we invite women to walk in the neighborhood, literally walking and analyzing how the neighborhoods use the public space, which kind of obstacles, dark points they find, the lack of spaces for playing and to enjoy the city. And I think this is a very interesting project and very interesting way to make women involved in the reality of the city, because the majority of the participators were women, because we use the space, we go to the market, we go to the school, we take care of the elder, we take care of the smallers. Then it's important. They were then included in the design and the implementation of this space, which finally adapted to the real needs and the real use to the neighborhood. I think in both these projects, there was a high level of involvement of women and youth, as they are affected directly. There were just two projects. We have a lot of, but I think it's a quite example of what we are doing.
Thank you very much. I hope we will have some time to maybe discuss some more projects. And now, last but not least, we will have an academic point of view on cities and democracies. Can a democracy be rebuilt from the city's level, like in my country? So I'll give the floor, thank you for accepting the invitation, to Mr. Daniel Kelemen, who is Professor of Political Science and Law and Chair of the Department of Political Science at Rutgers University. If you could reflect on what you've heard and all the politicians from maybe really a scientific view, please do. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Tüttő. Thank you to Mayor Kata, the CEU Democracy Institute, Political Capital Institute, and all the organizers for inviting me to this outstanding conference. I'm very sorry I can't be with you in Budapest, a city that's very dear to me, where I used to live, where my father was born. But instead, I'm coming to you from Philadelphia, a city where American democracy was born, and arguably the democratic stronghold where American democracy was saved in the 2020 election. But it's a real honor to speak at such an excellent conference and in the company of such distinguished panelists. And as you said, Deputy Mayor, the panelists, these are distinguished politicians who've already spoken about the practical experiences concerning the role of cities as democratic strongholds. So my role is to be the voice from academia. So what I'm going to talk about is what can we learn from academic research about the ability of cities to act as democratic strongholds within autocratic states or states that are moving in that direction. And then finally, what might the EU be able to do to help these cities? So the first thing I'd like to say is that often we think about regime type as an attribute of an entire political system. A country is a democracy or an autocracy. But more sophisticated analyses point out that different regime types can coexist inside the same political system at different levels. So you can have democratic federations like Argentina or Mexico or the US that have autocratic member states. Here in the US, after the Civil War, we had authoritarian single party states run by the Democratic Party in many southern US states. And that went on for nearly a century while they disenfranchised and oppressed their African-American citizens. Likewise, in a mostly democratic union like the EU can have autocratic member states like Hungary is today. And likewise, though, autocratic countries can harbor enclaves of democracy at the city level. So autocracies like Hungary or Turkey can have democratic enclaves like Budapest or Istanbul. Now, while there's a big academic literature on authoritarian or autocratic enclaves within democracies, there's much less written about democratic enclaves like cities within autocratic systems. And the reason there's much less written about this is that the common wisdom was there could be no real democracy at the municipal level inside an autocracy. And curiously, since this event is co-hosted by the CEU, the first university to be expelled from a European country since World War II, I would note that the famous professor Alfred Stepan, who was the first president and rector of the CEU, he considered this issue and was one of the first to write about it in 1996 when he and Juan Lintz asked, is it possible to create democratic subsystems within a non-democratic state? But their answer was probably not, because there would be a temptation of the government to destroy that democratic subsystem. But fortunately for us, I think they were wrong, actually, because there's a small but growing body of research that shows that while you can't have meaningful democracy in a hardened dictatorship, so Hong Kong could not remain democratic within China, you can have enclaves of democracy within these softer authoritarian or hybrid regimes that are becoming increasingly common, countries like Hungary or Turkey. So, but before I say how the hopeful side of the story and how cities can protect democracy and how the EU might help them, I have to briefly sort of mention the dark side of the story, because there are real risks to democratic enclaves within authoritarian regimes. So this is the uncomfortable part of my talk. But I say that there are risks because scholars have noted how sometimes authoritarians can strategically use some democratic institutions, including local democracy at the city level, to perpetuate their rule. How can they do this? Well, the autocrat can allow basically Potemkin democratic villages or cities, right? Where they allow some democratic control at the city level to help legitimize their regime internally or internationally, right? Saying, hey, see, I allow opposition activity. They have some mayorships. Second, the autocrat can constrain the democratic cities so they can't really form the basis for a viable opposition. They can starve them of resources. We've seen Orban do that in Hungary with manipulating parking levies and motor vehicle charges to starve the city and other cities of resources. Erdogan did similar things in Turkey. Finally, the autocrat can use local democracy as a pressure release valve, allowing critics to vent frustrations in a way that doesn't challenge the regime at the center. But with all those negative things said, I'll conclude by saying there are opportunities, right? Cities can, in some circumstances, act as democratic strongholds, and I think the EU can help. So this is the good news, okay? But for that to happen, two key conditions have to be met, and this is what I'll end with. For cities to act as strongholds of democracy, they must have independent sources of finance. If the national autocrat can control their funding too much, he can strangle them. He can reward loyal regime party cities and punish those run by the opposition. And even worse, if the national government controls the distribution of external funds, such as funds coming from the EU, he can channel them so as to reward his clients and punish democratic opposition cities. And unfortunately, for the past decade, that's what the EU has been doing. And look, I'm a Europhile, a Jean Monnet chair. I spent my life studying the EU, so it's always painful for me to say this, but the EU has been a huge subsidizer of the movement toward autocracy in Hungary. Okay? But this can change, and hopefully it will soon. And the key is for the EU to break the boundary control of the autocrat by suspending funds, as Commissioner Jourova was talking about, and by applying, for instance, the rule of law conditionality regulation, but then by eventually finding ways to channel the funds directly to the democratic municipalities. And then the very final point is that beyond providing financial resources, outside actors, in particular EU-level actors, also have to find ways to provide political support for the beleaguered democratic strongholds. Because the more that the local Democrats enjoy political support and connections from democratic leaders, both in other cities, as was mentioned, but also at the EU level, then the greater will be the cost to the autocrat of trying to suppress local democracy. And so it's less likely that they'll do it. And until now, the big problem in the EU has been that Euro parties have often blocked EU action against their pet autocrats at the national level, whereas the beleaguered democratic opposition, including democratic mayors, they haven't had much support from the EU level. And there's a lot of reasons for that we can go into in the discussion, norms, rules, et cetera. But I think the key thing is that they can do more. European leaders can and should do more to support democratic cities. They can appear at campaign rallies, denounce autocrats, and defend the cities that uphold democratic values. I'll stop there and look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much. I really feel what you've said so on my skin. We have very short time, so I think we will go to the Q&A session. So I would gather questions from the audience, and then I hope we can do a round. I will gather some questions, please.
Thank you very much. I am András Lukács, the president of Clean Air Action Group, a Hungarian environmental NGO. And I have a question to Vice President Jourova. Why do you need the rule of law mechanism to suspend funding to governments? The Barroso government, the Barroso Commission suspended funding to completely suspended funding to the Czech Republic, to Bulgaria, almost completely to Hungary, when it found that there were systemic irregularities in the use of EU funds. The situation today is much worse in some of these countries than it was during the Barroso Commission. So why can't you use the same method? Why can't you suspend funding with the existing regulation? Thank you.
I'm looking at the audience. If there are any other questions, yes.
Yes, thank you, Kata. Just briefly, thank you for mentioning the situation of democracy in the cities, and there's a lot of people with migrations and living many years, maybe generations, and don't have any access for voting. So my question to the European Commission, is there any initiatives going to go this part to implement democratic participation, at least on local level? And the second thing, mentioning our guest from Philadelphia, it's interesting for giving the funds to the cities directly, and that comes back to my words in the session before. It's very important that the cities and regions have a pillar or a possibility to be a part as a fourth column in the European Union. So not only the Commission, Parliament, and the states, but the cities should have really a possibility to lobby for this thing again.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. So I'll give the floor to the Commissioner Jourova, and then to the other panelists who would like to reflect on that. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. The time is short, so I will be short as well. Indeed, we can freeze the money, and we have done it many times before when we saw that the country does not have the properly functioning, reliable control and audit system. And this is always temporary. This is something which needs corrections on the member state level. So the money is frozen until the corrections are done on the member state level. The conditionality is one level above it, because we are responding to the gravity of the issue of the breach of rule of law by much more serious and heavy tool or sanction which might come, which would mean suspending all the money and setting up new mechanism. And I agree with Mr. Professor Kelemen that we should be able to directly pay the municipalities and the regions. It would mean to, and I really, believe me, I worked in the funds 20 years. So I know very well how the system works. It would mean total revolution in the distribution system, which is based on elementary trust given to the member states. So we would have to come back to some kind of pre-accession period and take over the administration of the funds and send them directly to the municipalities. There was never sufficient will, but also capacity to do that. So, but I believe that this conditionality can work as well, and that we will push the member states to correct something much more essential than just the control and audit system, to correct something which is the basic constitutional dysfunction, which is the breach of rule of law. And on the second question, sorry, it was something about migration, but I could not hear well here. The Commission, of course, is trying to push through the legislative system the migration and asylum package, and is also funding a lot of projects, a lot of NGOs which are helping people on the ground already now without the new legislation. So I don't know whether I am responding because I didn't hear well the question.
Do you want to rephrase the question?
No, the question is that we mentioned that a lot of people who don't have the citizenship and living in cities, and if you see now, for example, in Vienna, there you have some districts where 40% are excluded from voting on a local level because they don't have the access for voting, because the citizenship is one of the things.
Okay.
And the question is there any initiatives on European level to implement the right of voting at least on local level, because these citizens are living in these cities. They have the right to decide how the city is going to look like and participate. So if we talk about cities as a stronghold for democracies and exclude a lot of people from voting, this is a deficit that should be taken in consideration.
Yeah, there are two layers. The first layer then stays with the member state because the conditions for the citizenship are very much given to the hands of the national authorities. The second layer is once the people have the citizenship status, they have the fully guaranteed right to vote in municipal and European elections. And here comes the Commission with the infringements. We are already running several infringement procedures against some member states which are decreasing or limiting these rights, and which are also limiting the rights of the citizens to take active role in the elections and to become the candidates. So this is our part of the work. But the first step is for the member state to ground the citizenship status.
Thank you very much. We still have some time left, so I would love to give the floor to the panelists for like a 2 minutes reflection, if somebody would like to have the floor on either the questions or on what has been heard, or is your city doing something on mobilization for the conference on the future of Europe? Because I think that is also an interesting question. So who would like to have a floor for 2 minutes?
If I do begin, yes, we are planning and working on it. But two things. We have to act to make the European citizens, the other European citizens living in our cities, participating much more in our local elections. The average in France is 20%, is not enough. Paris is above, but still there's a lot of work to be done. And why? Because they will feel this European citizenship much more because they are participating. But also, how can we, and we have to, open the doors to the non-European citizens to have this possibility to participate in local election. And that's true. It is very important to be inclusive at that point. But when you have only 20% of the European citizens that have this right and do not use it, it's much more difficult to, convince the society to open to the non-European citizens. So that's the point. And just to be very clear on a second point, and to Commissioner also, it's always easy to say we need a revolution. But that's a fact, we need a revolution. We need a revolution that makes possible direct funding from UA to cities. We need it now because of pandemic, because of goals that have to be reached on climate change, because we are 70% living in cities, because we don't have much time, and as I saw on a teacher, there's no planet B. So we need this revolution. I know that it's not that easy, and it's not a question of trust or not trust to the governments, to the national governments. We have to work with them, but still the goal is to have a direct funding from UA to the cities. Recovery plan for all the matters that we heard, and then I'm not talking more.
Thank you very much. Enrico, Letta?
Yes, just 1 minute to say that I completely share what Professor Kelemen just said about the European Union and the relationship between member states, decisions on the ground, and the fact that on these topics, Europe is too intergovernmental, if I may say. But my general comment on that is that I think we have to rethink the relationship between the Copenhagen criteria and the way in which the European Union usual life goes on. Because the big problem at the European level is that with the Copenhagen criteria to get in and to be member of the European Union, the bar is very high. Once you get in, the bar is suddenly lowering. And I think this is the key issue. We have to higher the bar once countries are in, is the only way to be really very good in applying rule of law, as Commissioner Jourova said once some minutes ago. I think it is a general problem on Europe, and I think the lack of a true constitution maybe creates some problems on that, but I think we have to act on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura Pérez?
Just one idea to conclude. I think we share the idea that we are in a very complex historical moment. We are facing this historical moment of an important growing of inequalities. We are facing now the representative democracy is also in crisis, and we can see the polls. Many citizens feel disengaged from our democracy's system, and we have to face also the authoritarian and far-right forces, and they are threatening also the individual rights. We didn't have time to tackle all these issues, but of course we are worried because the groups such as ethnic minorities, migrants, LGTB people, and as we talked before, women. And in this complex context, I think that cities must have an important role to promote democracy.
Thank you very much. Professor Kelemen, last reflection?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I just come back to this point about the need or the importance of EU level and other national level leaders to intervene to support these cities that are acting as democratic strongholds in backsliding states. And I understand completely what Commissioner Jourova says, that something like the direct funding of cities, that can't be set up overnight. That's a longer term project, something I think is vital. But something that can be changed overnight are some of the norms about kind of political intervention. I think too often there have been, sort of due to norms about sovereignty and not intervening in internal affairs, that European leaders and others have sort of hesitated to step in to really denounce the autocrats and to really support the democratic leaders. But I think that needs to change, because the appeasers, they've been willing to do it, but really the defenders of democracy need to be stronger about being willing to intervene, appear at campaign rallies, speak the truth to power, and really break that kind of boundary control which these autocrats are placing around their countries, and give support that the Democrats need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think our time is up, so I'm closing this panel. I would like to thank all of our panelists being here in Budapest and being online for joining us today for this discussion. I thank you for all the participants here and online. Thank you very much. A big applause for our panelists. Thank you.